Everything changed the second Cortney Reardanz posted 3 words that nobody expected: "I am pregnant." The photo looked simple enough, but the details were anything but ordinary. Her hand held out the keys to a brand new house. Tags hinted at a price so wild it left fans gasping, and within minutes the comments were spinning out of control. Colt Johnson's name was already buried in the feeds, his sad exit lost in the latest drama, but nothing about this moment felt finished. Social media didn't just buzz, it caught fire. Was this girl, once so unlucky in love, now not only thriving but actually winning at the reality show of life? Public attention never really left Cortney after that last messy send-off with Colt. By now, everyone remembers how it went down: the suitcase, the long faces, the stiff silence in her family's hallway. Hundreds of thousands watched Colt pack up what little was left of his pride and disappear, leaving Cortney with nothing but heartbreak and a house full of awkward memories. People swore that would be the last we'd hear of him, and most figured Cortney was done for a while too. But if you turned off the TV thinking the drama ended there, you missed the quiet before the storm. The reactions online set the tone for what was coming. Within hours, every 90-day group, meme page, and gossip account was fighting to make sense of the news. How does someone go from teary breakup to million-dollar home and a pregnancy twist that fast? Theories hit hard. Some fans raised eyebrows at just how quickly Cortney's life had flipped. Others openly cheered her on, saying she deserved every bit of that happiness. Public sympathy turned into straight-up jealousy for a few. Most couldn't figure out if they were watching a comeback or the setup to an even bigger crash. Nobody seemed to know where the next hit would land. Was this new romance as perfect as the pictures? Was Cortney running from her past or stumbling forward into something real? Already, tiny hints in her captions and replies suggested trouble wasn't as far behind as it looked. Fans started hunting for clues, wondering if these glamorous milestones actually masked another set of problems no one saw coming. The stakes started climbing fast, not only for Cortney, but for anyone who had ever bet against her. Don't look away, because what comes next has everyone second-guessing everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and a reality star's ability to pull off the ultimate comeback. Most fans wanted to believe that after the cameras powered down, Colt and Cortney might quietly patch things up and start again. The show painted those first days of their reunion as a little world of second chances, late-night talks, and inside jokes only reality TV survivors can tell. He was suddenly attentive, almost clingy, like he knew the past was hunting him and he needed to outrun it at all costs. Cortney seemed lighter at first, even optimistic in the smallest ways, a fresh start unfolding right in her parents' kitchen. Social media caught glimpses of dinners, awkward selfies, a few giggles that almost looked real if you didn't look too hard. But behind every smile was something tense, something never fully spoken, and the audience felt it bubbling up long before the couple ever admitted the truth. Trust for both was a balancing act on a breaking branch. Colt had a reputation for slipping into old patterns just when things started to calm down. For Cortney, a misplaced text, a locked phone, or a poorly timed laugh was enough to make her question everything she wanted to believe. She'd lived through the kind of public embarrassment most people only imagine, with her heart wide open to an audience hungry for disaster. Viewers read it all, every tiny gesture, every stray glance, and the ones who'd been watching since the beginning knew these cracks were widening by the second. It never took much for things to implode. One evening, Colt slipped up. It was quiet, almost pathetic in its simplicity. Cortney noticed his phone barely left his side, always gripped tight. Notifications flipped over, as if the phone itself was a wall between them. One message too many finally caught her eye. She didn't want to snoop. She never really needed to because Colt made his mistakes out in the open. That was always his fatal flaw, thinking he could juggle everything without dropping the most obvious ball. A digital trail, plain as day, revealed scores of messages to a Brazilian woman named Diana. Not a fling, not a one-off, but messages that bled with intimacy and a kind of casual cruelty, as if this was common for him. Cortney's response didn't come with screaming or chaos at first. Anyone who has sat with that quiet gut-level certainty knows that silence is worse. She retreated, numb, while Colt tried to play off the connection as nothing but online noise. But receipts don't lie, and the audience got every savage detail as the story leaked to the fan pages. By the time the argument started, weeks of mistrust had already rotted whatever hope was left. Family members noticed the change instantly. Cortney's spark died out overnight, her sharp humor replaced by the look of someone preparing for a fight she never wanted to have. The relationship's foundation collapsed in slow motion, every text a hammer to the last scrap of trust. Just when it seemed like rock bottom had arrived, another secret slipped out that nobody guessed. Colt's digital world was even messier than Diana. The fracture lines snaked into her family. Arguments got louder, tempers shorter. Trust at home, where she once found some shelter, now felt invaded by someone who could never keep his story straight. Even supporters in Cortney's corner started questioning whether loyalty had become codependency or something much colder. The air thickened. She kicked him out, but not before a string of emotional accusations left them both gutted. Fans debated the fairness of it all, but nobody disputed the damage. As Colt dragged his suitcase away, another piece of unfinished business stayed behind. The pain lingered, not just for Cortney, but for her entire home. Outside, everything looked quieter. Inside, the urge to stalk through old messages and make sense of the chaos refused to fade. For people who've been through betrayal, this feeling is familiar. Insecurity turns into constant doubt, not only about the other person, but about yourself. Cortney tried to move past it, sometimes with anger, sometimes resignation, always with an undercurrent of "why me?" echoing in her social media posts. She poured her energy into small routines, exercise, friends, planning to move on, while the fans outside demanded an explanation for how it all fell apart so quickly. And just as people began to declare the drama over, a new face quietly entered the frame, shifting the entire story out of predictable heartbreak into complete uncertainty. No one saw the new chapter coming, least of all Cortney herself. Out for a low-key night with friends, she bumped into Phil at a lounge, the kind of place you forget is special until something unforgettable happens. Their conversations stretched into hours. Phil, with his calm presence and easy smile, seemed like a man from a different universe than the ex she'd just kicked out. Something about the way he listened, how he didn't bat an eye at her TV baggage, pulled her guard down. For the first time in months, Cortney felt safe where laughter didn't have to cover up fresh wounds. What started as casual turned serious in a flash, plans, promises, and the kind of connection nobody thought was possible right after such a disaster. The internet barely had time to catch up before rumors became headlines. Picture after picture showed Cortney looking as happy as anyone's ever seen her, but two things set the world on fire: Phil's age and that blinding $850,000 house key in her hand. 31 years older, silver hair shining, Phil had half the internet speculating he was buying affection and the other half labeling him a hero for restoring her faith in men. The debate burned hot. Is this a sugar daddy situation or the fairy tale twist no one expected? Some argued the age difference made for good reality TV, while others swore it hid bigger problems, that maybe both Cortney and Phil were searching for a shortcut to happiness. Fans flocked to comment sections to pick sides, and every opinion seemed louder than the last. These weren't just hot takes. They were accusations and confessions from people who saw their own lives reflected in the mess. When Cortney posted about her engagement, supporters said she deserved every ounce of good luck, while skeptics asked how much of her story was for the cameras. Did the expensive home represent a new foundation or a shiny cover for insecurities left by Colt? Every post became evidence. Sharing a look at her new kitchen or flashing a smile in the foyer, Cortney seemed to enjoy the chaos, almost daring the world to judge her joy or call it a rebound. Watching it unfold, you could feel the stakes push higher. Some fans threw support behind the relationship. Others questioned how fast everything raced from heartbreak to a wedding ring. When Phil proposed, there was no pause, no agonizing over the public eye. The answer came with the confidence of someone who'd already lived through every possible disaster and refused to repeat them. The speed of it all, the public spectacle, the expensive home, every bit of it gave fuel to the speculation. Is this new chapter built on real healing, or is it a carefully edited highlight reel set to implode once the cameras stop rolling? When people started arguing over whether love has an expiration date, Cortney and Phil leaned harder into their story, refusing to defend a romance that felt impossible from the start. For every accusation that Phil was trying to erase her past with a mansion, fired back were real-life snapshots, quiet mornings, off-screen moments, and easy laughter no money could buy. Yet, the questions never fully faded. Online, thousands speculated if their happiness could withstand the public storm. Would this new home truly shield Cortney from old heartbreak, or had she traded drama for a different kind of uncertainty? More importantly, was this relationship the happy ending fans wanted, or another open wound waiting for someone to poke? Even as congratulatory messages poured in, every detail from their fast engagement to the dizzying real estate receipt left one question hanging. If you rebuild too quickly, do you ever truly leave the past behind? Just as the outrage started to simmer down, one announcement would crash through any illusion of closure and spark a new wildfire across the 90-day Fiancé world. There comes a moment in every reality star's timeline where everyone stops scrolling and just stares, stunned and speechless. For Cortney, that moment arrived like a lightning strike. One simple Instagram post, nothing flashy, no filters, no sponsors. 3 words, bold and plain as daylight. I am pregnant. It landed like a bombshell right in the middle of the comment section, shattering any hope for peace or privacy, and for a few hours, no one wanted to talk about houses or age gaps or old heartbreaks. The only thing anyone cared about was how a woman who'd been written off 12 months ago ended up front and center with the future in her hands. Like wildfire, the news raced through fan accounts, spoiler groups, and gossip blogs, lighting up chat threads with speculation and, for the first time in a long time, genuine excitement. Fans who'd torn her apart for moving on too fast suddenly circled the wagons, showering love and well wishes beneath her announcement. Even some long-standing skeptics found themselves unexpectedly rooting for her. It was the kind of unity that only the promise of new life can spark, temporary, but shockingly genuine. Haters and defenders dropped their weapons long enough to wish health and happiness to someone who felt more like a character in their own chaotic story than a real person living a wild reality. There's something almost magical about how gossip disappears the second a baby is announced. Still, underneath the celebration, everyone wanted to know one thing. Would this joy last, or was the next storm already brewing behind those Instagram smiles? What nobody saw coming was the soft, almost invisible role Colt would play in this new chapter. Out of the spotlight and halfway out of the picture, he found himself tagged in the digital news cycle and pressed for comment. At first, people expected the usual, jealous scrolling, cryptic shade, maybe a regretful subtweet. But for once, Colt surprised everyone, most of all himself. His reaction was measured, almost gentle, a moment of private reckoning instead of a public meltdown. Instead of spiraling or throwing accusations, he sent a quiet message of good wishes. The man who couldn't keep his storyline out of the DMs somehow found the decency to accept he'd been part of her past, not her future. In the most unexpected twist, he put pride aside and wished her the happiness neither of them could make together. Fans who'd spent years rooting for or against Colt and Cortney didn't know what to do with this new dynamic. Some praised the calm, saying maybe, just maybe, the pressure of growing up on TV left them both more reflective than resentful. Others insisted the only reason for this mature exit was the permanent boundary presented by pregnancy and commitment, a line that could never be uncrossed now. Yet no matter which narrative you followed, everyone agreed. Watching these exes finally set aside bitterness for one moment of peace was the one ending nobody anticipated. That alone was almost enough to break the cynical cycle that holds so many reality TV stars hostage to their worst moments. Still, don't fool yourself. Recovery isn't a straight line, especially in public. For Cortney, the road from chaos to calm didn't flatten out the second she posted that ultrasound. Panic, doubt, and old wounds poked up like sharp stones under her feet. When the cameras went away, reality looked a lot less glamorous than the engagement party. She carried all the same scars, only now there were thousands of strangers watching each breath she took. Every mistake, every nervous laugh, every photo of that house turned into a lightning rod for old controversies. Some days, she wished the world would let her timeline fade to black, just for a while. But most days, she kept going, determined not to let the past write the next headline. With each update, the fanbase pushed new theories straight into the spotlight. Was Phil a rebound or a soulmate? Could a relationship built with this much speed and this many doubters survive its first real test? The message boards predicted disaster, dissecting Cortney's every move. Some claimed she wanted a father for her child more than a partner, and that Phil, for all his stability, wouldn't know what hit him once the diapers and sleepless nights kicked in. Others pointed out that trauma like hers doesn't just vanish because someone hands you a house key and says forever. But through it all, moments of surprising honesty broke through the noise. Every time Cortney posted about real-life struggles, body image, feeling alone, or missing her old self, she reminded her audience she wasn't acting. She was surviving. For every harsh comment, there were double the messages from people who related. Single moms, betrayed partners, anyone who'd been blindsided by love gone bad, they all saw pieces of themselves in a story nobody thought would end in a nursery. Social media does something weird to pain. It magnifies it at first, but if you're lucky, it can give you a crowd to cheer you through the hardest parts. Cortney felt that lift. She started talking more about boundaries, about picking yourself up, about not letting one catastrophic breakup decide your fate. It landed with viewers who'd quietly coped with shame, who saw in her a kind of stubborn grace that only survivors recognize. No matter where you looked, the story kept evolving. Each time the old wounds threatened to reopen, something softer, more hopeful, pressed in. Phil, for all the debate about his motives, proved unexpectedly solid. He appeared in background photos, always looking present, but never overshadowing. He was the steady hand behind the camera, the calm when old anxieties came calling, the rare sort of man who managed to support without smothering. Their relationship, for all the chaos surrounding it, started to look less like a rebound and more like a reset. Nobody could say for sure if it would last forever. But for now, nothing on screen or in the rumor mill looked more genuine than two people trying to get it right on the second or third try. Even then, the shadow of reality TV never totally left the room. The pressure to share, explain, justify, every milestone still felt like a test. Would the fans turn on her the second an old friend dropped by? Would headlines twist every slip-up into fresh scandal? Cortney learned fast how to separate real life from the storyline the public wanted to see, but she paid for every lesson with stress and second-guessing. For viewers, her new chapter was a kind of real-time therapy. Proof that sometimes you build happiness not by forgetting your past, but by refusing to let it become prophecy. Every announcement from Cortney, every peek inside her new routine, raised the next question. Was she finally free of the heartbreak cycle, or was the past lurking closer than she'd like to admit? In moments of vulnerability, she still wondered if moving forward this fast was bravery or denial. But no matter your take, it was impossible to look away. Nothing in this saga promised a clean ending. The happiest photos could mask hidden doubts, and even a warm wish from her ex could signal trouble under the surface. The real twist wasn't the baby or the engagement or even the $850K house. It was the silence after the noise, the feeling that another chapter was beginning almost as soon as everyone assumed the credits would roll. The dust never really settles on a story like Cortney's, not when the past keeps banging on the door and the future feels too bright to be real. From heartbreak under the world's microscope to holding that newborn key and a positive test in the same fist, she'd survived every twist with a smile that looked less fragile and more fearless each time the timeline shifted. Growth is easy to talk about when the cameras are off, but real change happens in public, standing in the glare of all those comments, watching old wounds flicker by as likes and shares. For Cortney, moving forward wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was learning when to tune out the static and when to stand up straight in the eye of the storm. Phil's role in all this stayed oddly steady, the one detail everyone kept circling but never quite pinned down. Despite the headlines screaming about their age gap and the price tag on their front door, he rarely took the bait. There were no show-off gestures, no lectures to the fans, just patient support and a willingness to appear as much or as little as Cortney wanted. Whether he was cooking dinner in the background or quietly cheering her on at prenatal appointments, Phil made space for her story instead of trying to rewrite it. That kind of presence, the steady kind, slowly won over even the loudest skeptics, because real stability looks ordinary until you've lived without it. For all the wild speculation online, something about them felt stubbornly down to earth once the shouting died down. Meanwhile, Colt stepped out of the spotlight exactly when people expected him to double down. His public goodbye wasn't dramatic, no last-minute desperate text, no mess of rumors on Reddit. Instead, he watched the new family from a respectful distance, his only comment a quiet wish for peace, for healing, maybe for the kind of happiness he'd failed to earn the first time around. Maturity sneaks up on people, and sometimes it looks like closing your mouth and opening your heart. For all his past antics, that moment of letting her go, letting himself off the hook, too, felt more like victory than defeat. For longtime fans, it was the final proof that even reality villains are still rewriting their own scripts, no matter who's watching. Did anyone really win? That depends on who you ask. For some, Cortney carried her scars like battle medals and emerged as proof you don't have to stay broken, no matter how many cameras are rolling. For others, Phil's quiet trust showed a different path through the storm, where love isn't always loud and the loudest story isn't always true. And for those still rooting for Colt to turn things around, his uneasy acceptance that the story had moved on without him was, in a weird way, its own kind of hope. Maybe, just maybe, growth happens when the ending nobody wanted turns into the fresh start nobody dared ask for. Even now, with a baby on the way and the dust from the old dramas starting to settle, the question lingers, can you ever really close the book on a love life lived in front of millions? Every fan who's watched long enough knows the answer isn't simple. Healing leaves a mark, and new chapters don't erase old characters. The line between ex and friend stays blurry, especially when forgiveness nags at the edges of anger, and the world keeps voting on your decisions with every new post. Just when people started hoping for a little peace, whispers started again. Screenshots surfaced, showing Cortney still texting Colt in the middle of the night, messages labeled as check-ins, updates, or friendly advice. Fans lost their minds, convinced the cycle was starting over, ready to tally up all the old mistakes. Some wanted to see betrayal, where there was only nostalgia. Others wondered if letting him back in, even as a friend, would mean risking everything she'd built from the ashes. The comment wars took off, half calling her naive for opening the door again, half praising her for being big enough to offer a second, maybe a thousandth, chance. Staying friends with an ex is always risky, but in a world where everyone from your barista to your high school lab partner knows your relationship history, it gets downright explosive. Cortney's motives were impossible to pin down. Was it guilt from the past? Compassion for someone who fell when she needed to stand up? Or had the years of forgiveness and public shaming dulled her sense of what was healthy and what was just habit? Every update became a test of boundaries, bold enough for healing, but vulnerable to old spirals. Phil's patience added a new layer of tension, with fans pointing out that love triangles rarely end well on reality TV, no matter how much you promise you've learned a lesson. Yet even as confusion swirled and fans watched every move, there was a new kind of confidence radiating from Cortney. She walked through her new house like someone who knew the ground beneath her feet, not because it was perfect, but because she'd survived the earthquake. This wasn't a story where the princess gets rescued or the villain gets humiliated. It was raw, messy growth, where victory looks a lot like stumbling forward with your head held high. Her Instagram stories stopped trying to edit out the ordinary. Spilled milk, tired eyes, a half-dead houseplant battling for life. The polished version of happiness faded, replaced by something people recognized as real. Not everyone forgave. Not every critic fell silent. But day by day, new comments blended with the old, until the lines between love, pity, envy, and simple curiosity blurred into one long scroll. Fans kept asking, would Phil's patience outlast the drama? Would Colt accept a spot as supporting cast and never main character again? Would the next baby photo turn into a birth announcement or another headline? Each post became a new episode, a new round of bets on what the next chapter would bring. If there's one lesson nobody doubts, it's this: no matter how cleanly you close one book, somebody out there is already writing the sequel. What comes next is anyone's guess. Maybe complicity is just the shadow of forgiveness, and maybe old habits never die. But right now, everything is possible. Cortney has rebuilt, not because the world let her, but because she never waited for permission in the first place. All eyes are watching, some rooting for chaos, some desperate for peace, but everyone bracing for the next shock the moment it drops. If you thought this ride was ending, think again, because up next, everything Cortney thought was private could explode, and the most unexpected confrontation is closer than anyone dares admit.